Welcome to All Things Work. I'm your host, Ann Sparacco. Today we're exploring the increasingly critical importance of untapped talent pools and what that means for organizations' inclusion and diversity initiatives as a new administration settles into the White House. Joining us to really dig into this pressing issues is Clayton Lord, Senior Program Director of the SHRM Foundation. Clay, welcome to All Things Work.
Thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here.
We're happy to have you and happy to really run through this very important discussion today, especially as things are actively changing.
They are actively changing. That is true.
Yeah, exactly. So let's start off with just kind of a high-level overview of your role with the SHRM Foundation and the SHRM Foundation's mission.
Oh, sure. Well, yeah, and so the SHRM Foundation is the 501c3 nonprofit arm of SHRM. And we've been around almost as long as SHRM has. But for the last 7 years or so, we have been what's called an operating foundation, which means that we raise external dollars and then we spend them on programs and services and tools and trainings, particularly to support our mission, which is to equip and empower HR professionals as forces for social good. And so my role in that, I'm the Senior Program Director at the Foundation. And so I oversee all the different programmatic initiatives that we do, and then also do our impact evaluation work and our strategic planning work as well. And I work with an amazing group of folks who cover all three of the main portfolios of work the Foundation's involved in.
The SHRM Foundation does amazing work. I mean, you guys are really always trying to improve the world of work in the communities that surround it. And with the SHRM Foundation helping to expand access to work, you zoom in on 3 interconnected areas. Can you talk about those 3 areas?
Sure, absolutely. And the SHRM Foundation works particularly with employers, particularly SHRM's membership, the 340,000 members that SHRM has all over the world. And we work on 3 interconnected pools, as you said. The first one is called Widening Pathways to Work and is specifically focused on helping employers to embrace skills-first hiring and advancement strategies, as well as the full spectrum of talent that's out there, including all of the groups that we call untapped pools of talent, which we're going to talk a little bit about for the rest of this time. The second one is Strengthening the HR Field. That's really focused specifically on all of the amazing HR professionals that are out there in the United States who need scholarships, grants, awards. We have a fellowship program. We run an internship program. We run an apprenticeship program in HR. And then the third area is called Thriving Together, and it's particularly focused around equipping employers with what they need to address these sort of wraparound challenges that a lot of workers across the country are facing, so that all of those workers as well as the workplaces can thrive together.
Talk about inclusion at its finest.
Right.
I love it. So like you said, we're digging into that first area, widening pathways to work. And specifically the Foundation's focus on untapped talent pools. So we've mentioned this phrase a couple of times. So can you talk to us about what exactly untapped talent pools are and, what are some of those main areas of, those demographics that you guys target?
Yeah, I mean, I think our mission in general at the Foundation is that we want to create this future where everyone who wants to access work is able to access work and they're able to do it in a way that's meaningful to them and that allows them to succeed for the employer as well. And so among that everyone is a whole group of people who for various reasons have been locked out of a lot of opportunity, basically based on life conditions. And so with that group, we call that untapped pools of talent.
Right.
Within that, we have 5 key populations that we focus on. There are certainly more untapped pools out there.
Right.
But for the Foundation, we are particularly focused on military community, which is military veterans, active military, and their families and caregivers. We focus on people with disabilities, and that's disability of any type, either physical or mental, that has kept them from certain aspects and opportunities in the world of work. We focus on older workers, which are people age 60 plus. Age 75 plus is the fastest growing population in the workforce today.
Really?
And we anticipate that is going to continue to grow over the next 5 to 10 years. We focus on opportunity youth, which are folks age 16 to age 24, who are neither in work nor at school. And then finally, we focused on justice-impacted populations. Those are people who have had run-ins with the justice system that have in various ways created a record that makes them makes it harder for them to access certain positions. Together, those last 2 we call first chance and second chance, and they often play together.
I love that. And thank you for walking us through all those untapped pools of talent. There's so many people may not even realize that there are out there. That is why the SHRM Foundation is so important. I would love to zoom in and give a little kind of example from that list, and that is the military veterans, part of the larger military community area that you guys cover. SHRM's report, which is called Completing the Mission Best Practices for Recruiting and Hiring Veterans. We love doing our research right here.
Absolutely. And we love working with SHRM on these research
Exactly.
reports.
I love it. And SHRM surveyed HR professionals to find 96%. That's a big number. 96% of them agreed veterans can thrive in both entry-level and managerial roles. And 68% of HR professionals said veterans perform better or even much better than civilians. Just kind of, let's start off with, what are your thoughts on those numbers? They're quite staggering.
They're staggering, but to me, they're not surprising. One of the things that is particularly important to understand about our veteran population is, one, it's millions of Americans.
Yep.
And two, they are chronically underutilized, as is the whole military community in general when it comes to civilian work. And that's in part because the qualifications that you develop as part of a military tenure are sometimes really hard to translate into civilian work. And so you've got a bunch of amazing folks who have a lot of qualifications to do quite high-level work. So absolutely entry-level positions. But also, we're talking about folks who could transfer right now into a vice president position in some company and have amazing success. But because it's very hard right now through the technology that's available, and because HR professionals and hiring managers generally don't have a lot of familiarity with aspects of the military accommodations or commendation structure, they end up in positions where they are not necessarily always given the opportunity to explain their expertise. And so they get locked out of positions that they otherwise should be in. And one of the results of that is when a veteran does successfully access a civilian job, I mean, you saw the numbers. It's a huge percentage of folks who are like, oh my gosh, these people are not only as good as other candidates, they are excellent, they are better. And so a lot of our work at the foundation is about helping employers not only understand that, because as you saw there as well, 96% of employers agree that veterans are a really viable population, but how to act on that. And a lot of our work at the foundation, because HR professionals are really smart people, generally the goal is not around helping them understand and agree with a position like we should hire more veterans. It's saying, we know you want to hire more veterans. We need to give you the tools to do that because we know also that you are an overworked professional. You've got a bunch of number one priorities. And while this may be one of them, it falls in a large list. And so if we can make it as easy as possible for you, then you're more likely to succeed and that veteran is more likely to get hired.
Supporting to support, all of the above. And it is really hard to kind of translate your skills when you're shifting careers such as that, especially with the military language. So many people might not really understand it. So again, that kind of support is so necessary. I'm going to throw in some more research because we love it, right? According to the SHRM Foundation's website, 62% of Americans over the age of 25, that is more than 175 million workers, let that sink in, that do not have traditional degrees. Given this stat, along with everything from the labor shortages to even the skills gaps that we're facing on the global economy, why is it important now more than ever for organizations to look into these untapped pools of talent?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I think it's worth just emphasizing what you said there, which is that 2 in 3 working age Americans do not have a 4-year degree. The companion stat that we often use is that according to other research that's also on the SHRM Foundation website, 3 in 4 job descriptions right now ask for a 4-year degree. And so you've got this major disconnect that's happening. And while, when you're talking about untapped pools, it is not always true that they don't have a 2 or 4-year degree. There are a significant number of people who fall into the untapped pools who also fall into being skills educated as opposed to formally educated. And in that context, it's really important that HR professionals and hiring managers have the tools in place so that they can see that full spectrum of skills and competencies and aptitudes that someone's bringing to the table. So that if you do get a military veteran who's coming through your door, you are able to adjudicate the fullness of their abilities, the fullness of their passions and beliefs, and exactly what they can do for you. And right now, degrees are used as a proxy for a lot of very legitimate reasons. HR professionals and hiring managers don't have enough time.
Right.
AI has made it really easy to apply for jobs. And so you need some way of filtering out some of the candidates that are in the mix. But the challenge with proxies like degrees or like civilian work experience in a vacuum is that they don't tell the full story of the person. And so you end up with a lot of people who basically know how to work algorithms rather than the full spectrum of people who could do that job well for you.
Exactly. You really got to look into what other types of skills these untapped talent pools actually have.
Right.
I mean, even just kind of going back to military veterans, or even caregivers, they have this different type of skill set. You know that if you're a good caregiver, there's a lot of things you're paying attention to, and you're going to be a good colleague. You're just going to be that good coworker, because if you can do that, you're going to be there for your coworkers as well. You're going to understand that empathetic side of the work, and that really can carry you far. You can teach a lot of the skills.
Right.
It's that part.
Well, and it's not, absolutely in terms of empathy, but let's also just point out that being a caregiver at home means that you basically have to be a master project planner.
Exactly, that
right?
too.
So one of the things that we're really working on is making it easier for folks who have developed their skills in non-traditional spaces, whether that is a caregiver who for the last 15 years has been managing the schedules of 4 people in their household, or is a former inmate who, while they were in prison, they learned how to cook really well in the commissary. Those skills should be stood up and judged as part of any job search process. And our belief is that they should actually come before where those skills were learned. So it's actually more important to know that this person has empathy and project management than it is to understand that they developed those not through some sort of 4-year college degree, although they may have that too, but through the kind of military level organizing that is required to get a spouse and 3 children out the door every day, right?
Oh, it's a challenge on its own.
Oh my
but,
God.
definitely a skill set that they have, and it's really hard to get this down on a piece of paper in someone's resume or their application. So it's really good to kind of, take that and see that they might have this background. Be curious as to what else they might be able to offer outside of that traditional 4-year degree. What's that skills-based hiring that you guys can do? I absolutely love that.
Yeah.
So thank you for sharing that insight. It was good examples too. We talked about skills first hiring. Can you touch on a little bit about what the SHRM Foundation is doing to help promote skills first hiring and to support those HR professionals?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's one of our major focuses at the foundation. And with the support of the Charles Koch Foundation and Walmart and the Workday Foundation, we're actually like 8 weeks from a major launch of something called the Center for a Skills First Future. And what it's designed to do is to make it possible for employers to see the full spectrum of resources that they have at their fingertips, to change their policies and practices so that they can see all of those skills and competencies and aptitudes of a person, regardless of where they collected those, including untapped pools of talent. So the center will be a web hub. It'll have about 500 resources when it opens, including 200 case studies of employers who are doing various types of skills first hiring and advancement, whether that has to do with adjusting their job descriptions to be more open to different pathways, or creating onboarding programs that emphasize upskilling and reskilling so that you can get someone come through the door and they don't have to have all the skills right at the start, but can instead learn them over time. We're also putting on the front of that, because we know that HR professionals are incredibly busy, a readiness assessment and recommendation engine. So they'll be able to take a quick survey of about 15 or 20 minutes. And at the end of that, it's going to tell them, based on what you said, here's how we think you can access this library of resources. And here's what we think you can take as incremental, measurable, and manageable actions that you can do in your day-to-day work that are going to move your organization towards embracing this skills-first future, embracing this full spectrum of talent. We've also partnered with Enterprise Solutions here at SHRM to expand their vendor database to include a specific frame around skills-first vendors. So there'll be 300 to 400 of them right at the start, and HR professionals will be able to go in there and see what other HR professionals have said about them. So they'll see star ratings, they'll see brief reviews, so that they can find some of those vendors, because we also know, if you're talking about, for example, addressing military-connected talent, they may have to find an external vendor who can help them with that translation between the military record that someone has and their civilian capabilities. And then finally, and maybe the most exciting to us, is that we partnered with SHRM Education to develop a skills-first credential. So there'll be about a 15-hour credential that HR professionals can take that will educate them in skills-first hiring and advancement practices so that they can get that certification at the end of it, and they can bring that to their bosses and decision makers and say, I do know what I'm talking about, and this is the future, and here's how this can help us to expand our talent pool and access this full spectrum of amazing people in the United States who have what we need for our business to succeed.
So much exciting things happening just with, the work that you and the SHRM Foundation team are doing with the other departments of SHRM. It's amazing how it's so all interconnected, and we're really trying to maximize, what SHRM can offer at the end of the day. And I think that's really great. Okay, so turning back to those untapped talent pools, we are all aware the new White House administration signed executive orders affecting programs that are focused on inclusion and diversity initiatives. Can you discuss a little bit about the potential impacts that could have on these untapped talent pools and how organizations work with these people?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I will say it's a really fast-moving landscape. So right now, in the waning days of February, here's what I would say, is that depending on the work that you're doing, supporting untapped pools of talent to access work and increasing your knowledge and awareness of the skills and competencies that untapped talent members of your talent pool are bringing to the table, it goes nowhere near the sort of boundaries that are being set up with these executive orders. The inclusion and diversity focus point on these executive orders is really fairly squarely focused around unchangeable characteristics of a person. So in terms of the definition of the White House, that includes things like gender, includes things like race. There are certain categories that are protected by law that the EOs have not touched, for example, disability and veteran status.
Okay.
So those are still completely legal to focus on. And more than that, the administration has put a strong emphasis on merit as the framework for approaching how you are navigating such initiatives. And I would argue that all of the work the SHRM Foundation is doing and most of the untapped talent initiatives that I see employers implementing is about reducing barriers that are keeping people from demonstrating the fullness of their merit simply based on characteristics that really shouldn't come into play necessarily. So let's take military populations, for example. We talked earlier about the fact that it has less to do with this person's ability to be a vice president than it does with this HR person or this hiring manager's ability to understand what that veteran did before in the military space. So if we work to make it easier to translate a veteran's capabilities from the military to a civilian setting, that's about allowing everyone to see the fullness of their merit. It is not about any of the sort of DEIA framing that has come out of the White House and is sort of the focal point of the EOs.
And we got a lot of acronyms here, so.
Oh, sure.
SHRM, obviously has this new framework called BEAM, or it's called Belonging Enhanced by Access Through Merit. And it's really to help organizations adapt to these changes, really navigate these executive orders because it can be difficult or challenging. And, that's why SHRM is here to be the guide.
Right.
So if organizations already focusing their efforts on untapped talent pools, what adjustments should they really be making to ensure they meet their goals in a way that's aligned with this BEAM framework?
Well, so if you take a look at the BEAM framework, which is a fantastic framework, and it's particularly fantastic for the fact that it's so short, and you can use it as really a first step. I don't think it's by any means a last step. You absolutely should, if you are feeling that you need to engage legal advice as you are navigating the particular nature of the programs that you're doing around untapped pools or any other area. But I think the number one most important thing within that framework as it relates to untapped pools of talent is to make sure that the work that you are doing is focused around reducing barriers that can exist for anyone, but happen to only exist for some. So let's take disability, for example. In the course of someone's life, almost everyone at some point or other will be disabled in some way. Whether it's a permanent disability or whether it's I broke my leg or whether it is I'm old enough now that I can't see as well as I used to. And because of that, if what you're doing is moving in a way that allows you to make sure that that disability is not unreasonably setting up a barrier for someone who otherwise would have the merit for the position, you're actually, I believe, moving in the way that the administration is trying to get people to move. If instead what you were doing was focusing on, again, in the context of this administration, activities that were specifically focused on certain races, that is something that this administration is not interested in sort of supporting. I think it's also important to note, though, that the executive orders are not law. And so while you absolutely should follow that guidance, and it again is another point where you need to engage with your legal team, those on their face are no more or less legal than they were before.
Probably similar advice for organizations looking to maybe start new initiatives to help these untapped pools of talent and recruit them, right?
Yeah, I mean, I was having a conversation recently with a legal person, and what they were saying is examples of things that tend to, or they seem to fall into the category that is more acceptable in this current environment are a focal point around being the first in your family to graduate from college, or being the first in your family to go into the military, or someone who has exited the military was an example that was given, and you now have a veteran status. People who are caregivers. So people, there are 3 out of 4 people in the United States at any given time are working caregivers. That means that it is basically something that is universal. And so it falls well within the bounds of what's being encouraged. If you are setting up, flexibility in the workplace, allowing for people who have caregiving responsibilities to still demonstrate the fullness of their merit, then you're doing, as far as I'm concerned, great work.
Throw this out there because we talked about caregivers. There's also the sandwich generation.
Oh, absolutely.
Which is
one of them.
Yes, yeah. So I mean, prime example right here. And people who are taking care of maybe an elderly, family member, but also taking care of children. And don't forget, if something happens to your home, you have to take care of your home. That's another form of caregiving, especially for people who, maybe lost their homes due to natural disasters this past year. It just, life happens, and this is what, why we're here to make this effort, right?
It's a lot of what the foundation's work in the Thriving Together part, which we're not really talking about today, but the focus of our work in that area is really around all of those things that can buffet you in life. Exactly. So, at any given time, over half of all American workers have at least one unmet basic need. And by that, I mean transportation, housing, food, feeling of safety. That's a lot of people.
Right.
At the same time, about 3 out of 4 people, like I was saying, are working caregivers at any given time. As a sandwich caregiver myself, I have both a 14-year-old and also a mom who just turned 80. And SHRM has been incredibly flexible in allowing me to navigate this stage of life, particularly as I have moved my mom from one place in the country up nearer to us, as we're navigating what it's like to be 80 years old. And having to figure out how to sort of make your life in a new place. And I think that the thing that is really important to note there, and that is kind of at the core of all of this work that we're doing, is that those conditions in my life should not, if we are in a perfect place, affect my ability to do the best work I possibly can. And they're all barriers right now, but they are barriers that between your employer and the public policy space and the community that you're in, the education providers, the social service organizations, there is a way for us to set up a better system to help everyone navigate that. Untapped pools of talent are no different. They are also folks who, in various ways, have been confronted by statuses in their life that sort of unjustly are keeping them from demonstrating their full merit. So if you're a military spouse, which is another of our focus populations, you have an unemployment rate that is something like 3 times as high as the standard unemployment rate in the United States. And that is almost entirely due to the fact that you have to move every few years because your partner who's in the military has to move. That is not a great reason to not have that person on staff, because we also know that they have some of the same resiliency characteristics and durable skills as we were talking about earlier. They often have a significant amount of education. They've got a lot of things to bring to the table. At the SHRM Foundation, we have 2 members of our staff who are military spouses, one of whom is based in South Carolina, the other of whom is based in Europe. And we work to accommodate that because we know that they bring a bunch to the table. And we don't think that their status as a military spouse should keep them from being able to bring that work to the forefront for us at the foundation.
I agree. And thank you for sharing that personal story. Just to give somebody in our audience a real example of what that looks like. And of course, that's one of so many different types
Absolutely.
of untapped talent pools. I would love to leave our audience off with this. What is something you really want the audience to take away from our conversation today, especially as the SHRM Foundation really navigates and helps HR professionals and navigate these untapped talent pools as we get these executive orders and learn more under the new administration and everything else that's happening in 2025.
I think the big thing I would hope everyone comes away from is that we recognize that a lot of these conversations about untapped talent pools around skills first hiring and advancement strategies are sort of freighted with conversations about risk. It can feel risky to expand your talent pool. It can feel risky to engage with someone who has developed a skill stack but did it outside of the degree system. And our hope at the foundation is that Skills First Future and some of the other tools that we're developing with our partners help mitigate that risk by making it easier for folks to find exactly what they need, giving HR professionals a more formal education on how to do this work well. But we also think it's sort of important to understand that some level of risk in this context is going to have an amazing reward. And if you look at any of those research reports that you mentioned, a couple of them, we actually put out 5 research reports in conjunction with SHRM Research just last year. We've got one coming out soon on caregiving. We've got one coming out on older workers. There's another one coming out, I think, later this year around disability. So there's tons of options for people to access that research and find the data that says that all of these folks are skilled in incredible ways, and that a lot of these things that have historically been barriers to their participation in the workforce are actually huge benefits for employers.
And come to SHRM and the SHRM Foundation for guidance.
For guidance, absolutely.
All right, Clay, thank you so much for joining us on this episode and sharing your expertise and insight. Really helped guide us through this conversation. I'm sure there's so much more to talk about. So thank you.
Thank you.
Awesome. And that's going to do it for this week's episode of All Things Work. Thank you, Clay, for sharing your insight again. We have new content each week with a newsletter and the latest research on these big topics. So head to shrm.org/allthingswork to learn more. That's it for this week. We'll catch you next time.
SHRM.